Hey, what's happening? Welcome back. My name's Jason Priester at ClemsonInsider.com. We do it every Monday night, 7 p.m. right here, rain or shine. It is pouring down at my house as we speak. Hope most of you stay dry today. We were supposed to get about a couple of inches. I think the weatherman was wrong. Bye week is behind us. Clemson faces NC State Saturday, noon kick, the dreaded noon game. Man, I hate noon games. Once you get in there and get situated, I love them, man. But having to navigate that traffic and actually get to the stadium, I hate noon games for that. Do like the fact that we'll be out of there early, unlike getting out of there at 2 o'clock in the morning like we did App State or whatever it was that night. But man, has the narrative changed surrounding this game in a matter of a couple of days. NC State kind of struggles again. Grayson McCall doesn't really look all that great. Once again, gets hurt in the second quarter. Freshman quarterback comes in, leads them back to the win. Didn't look too bad. I would say he looked better than Grayson McCall, though I didn't really watch all of that game. I kind of watched at it back and forth. I was flipping back and forth during that one. But he's going to get the start this Saturday. True freshman, 6'6", big kid. At Clemson, where North Carolina State's not won in forever. They have won 2 out of the past 3, both those in Raleigh. Dave Dorn's never won in Clemson. That is a feather I'm sure he would love to be able to stick in his cap. But, man, the point spread has taken a wild turn in this thing. It is up to 20.5. And it's hard for me to wrap my head around the fact that is just because Grayson McCall's out. It's not like he was lighting it up, before he went down. I think he threw for like 105 yards in the loss to Tennessee. He was rather pedestrian for most of the game in the opener against Western Carolina, and he was rather pedestrian against Louisiana Tech Saturday. I don't know a lot about Bailey, though. So I can't, about all I can tell you outside of the little bit I watched the other night is he was a very, very low 3-star coming out of high school. I forget where he can come from now, but but they beat Clemson last year with some freshmen, man. To me, it ain't about who starts at quarterback. It's about not letting Concepcion beat you again, because he kind of single-handedly beat them last year. And to me, that's what it's about. You gotta make sure that you keep that guy in front of you. Don't let him get behind the defense. Wouldn't shock me to see, West Cohen do what they did last week with Shelton Lewis in the nickel, Khalil Barnes at one of the deep safety spots. I kind of like that look when you're in the nickel, but gives you some athleticism back there and some guys that can cover. But Concepcion was a nightmare last year for Clemson. That's got to be, priority number one, as opposed to who's playing quarterback. But Just based off the couple of games that they played this year, I think Bailey looked a little bit better in that second half than Grayson McCall's look. I kind of view North Carolina State in a similar garb as I view Florida State. Um, it before in the offseason, I talked many times. I thought they added some really good pieces from the portal, including McCall. Same thing with Florida State. It just goes to show you don't ever know what you're going to get until you get them on the field. And for both those programs, it's just not translated. Florida State took another bad loss Saturday, 0-3. They lose to Memphis. I watched a lot of that one. Pretty much watched all of the South Carolina LSU game. I thought the calls on the pick sixes were both right. I thought the offensive pass interference penalty, I thought that was brutal, man. There was no sense in that flag being thrown. And there's also one I thought South Carolina got hosed on that's not getting talked about as much. The first half interception by Sellers, I thought that should have been roughing the passer. I thought he got hit in the face about the same time he threw the ball, and it was pretty obvious. To me, those were the two biggest calls. But I didn't, on that last pick six, anytime you take a quarterback out like that, it's going to get called. I don't care if he takes a couple of slow steps toward the defender. It's going to get called every single time. And I was told every official on the field threw their flag. I know 3 of them did. That just kind of shows you exactly that just kind of shows you it's going to get called every time. The other one that got called back, that's a new rule this year. You can't horse collar inside the pocket anymore. So that's a new one this year. That was the right call too. Last year that would have been perfectly legal. Not so much this year. That was a brutal way to lose, man. It just goes to show you that there are a lot of teams in this country that they lose their starting quarterback, they're screwed, man. They're screwed. South Carolina just had no offense once they lost their quarterback. And Ashford came into the game, just really no threat of throwing the ball down the field. And to me, that was the biggest thing. That they can moan and groan about the officials all they want, but their lack of an ability to, move the ball consistently in that second half is what really cost them more than anything. Just a brutal way to lose. And I know a couple people over there, man, and they at least a couple people I know over there, man, have taken that one hard. Feel sorry for the freshman QB who will start for North Carolina State, be running for his life. Yeah, their offensive line's been putrid. At least in what I've seen. It's hard to watch all the games sometimes on Saturdays. I got to watch a lot this Saturday, but again, I didn't watch a ton of that when I was slipping back and forth. Mostly kind of checking in on it more than anything, but did watch a little bit of the second half after McCall got hurt. They started coming back, but it'll be interesting to see what kind of, plan Wes Goodwin has. And I kind of think they'll probably dedicate a lot of, effort to coverage and let the front four take care of the pass rush. Because again, you can't let that Concepcion kid beat you like he did last year. I'm not even sure he's 100% healthy either, although I've not heard anything about him not playing. It wasn't mentioned today in Doran's press conference. But the question becomes, does Peter Woods play? I would absolutely 100% expect Dabo Swinney to kind of probably say the same thing tomorrow that he said last time we heard him talk about Peter Woods. He's day-to-day. It's pretty much what he says about everybody. It's a big loss if he can't play. There's just is a spot they don't have a lot of depth, or at least experienced depth. You might be looking at Cade Denoff out there if Peter Woods can't go. And as I like to say, I don't know if that gives me the warm and fuzzies, man. Maybe Hoffler gets some opportunities. Maybe they move another one of those tackles outside for one game, which I know they've talked about moving a couple outside other than Woods back into preseason if they needed to. Be interested to see what they do if Woods can't go. Clemson by 28. I don't know if I'm willing to go that far, man. That 20 and a half number is big, man. That is a big number. I'm not much of a gambler, but if I was, I would probably take North Carolina State in the 20 and a half points. I got to see more from that Clemson offense than one night against the App State defense that I don't know how good they are yet. 28's a lot. That's a bold one. I like it though. Clemson match. Oh, it's Casey from Longhorns. I'm telling y'all, if you're in the area, go see my man. He will take care of you. Longhorns right there in Clemson. From a Clemson matchup perspective, who would you rather have play CJ Bailey or McCall? Also appreciate it. Yeah, man. Can't stand how TV dictates starts times as well. Yeah, that's just the world we live in. Just the world we live in. The way McCall's played, if I'm a Clemson fan, I'd probably rather see him. You know what you're getting. I don't think he's as mobile as the Bailey kid is. I don't think McCall's quite as athletic and mobile as the younger kid is. And that's just, again, I've not seen very much of the Bailey kid, but that's kind of what I've gathered about him and trying to study up on him a little bit today. There ain't been a whole lot that I found on him. Not that I went and did some deep dive or anything, but and more so, McCall just hasn't been playing that well. I don't know how much it impacts the game either way. To me, that offensive line of theirs has just been absolutely brutal, man. Brutal. Whichever quarterback's back there, if they keep playing at the same level they've been playing, he's not going to have very much protection. How is Woods? See, I don't know. We've not heard anything about, with the bye week, we don't hear from the coaches or anything. I haven't really heard anything about Woods other than last time I heard about Woods was late last week, and they weren't sure whether he'd be ready to go by North Carolina State or not. Carolina has to win that game. Can't let us slip away like that. Backup play good enough to win. I agree with the first part. I don't know that I agree with the second part. I don't know that the backup did a whole heck of a lot outside of the one pass that was called back. They weren't able to move the ball, but he's the backup for a reason. But when you're up 17-0 and your defense is playing the way their defense was playing over the first 15, 20 minutes of that game, you got to win that game. Once Sellers went down, it was going to be on the defense, and they failed that test. For whatever reason, they did not play the same way in the second half that they played in the first half. That pass rush was not nearly what it was in the second half, or as opposed compared to what it was in the first half. They were just, and I don't think that LSU offensive line is very good. They were just feasting in that first half, or particularly that first quarter. And then all of a sudden, they started just going with a lot of three-man rushes. I didn't like that. I don't know why. You get up 17 in the first quarter. The game's far from over, man. You better quit. You better keep playing the same way you've been playing. But even in the second half, it's like a tale of two halves. And as ineffective as the offense was in the second half, the defense was nowhere near as effective as it was in the first half, which was, a little surprising to me because over the first, I watched their game, or at least the first half versus Kentucky last week. And I got to watch some of the Old Dominion game. And then I watched, you start watching the first quarter of that game yesterday, and it's like, man, their defensive line's really good. They're very aggressive, man. They get after the quarterback, and then all of a sudden in the second half, just didn't see it anymore for whatever reason. But yeah, I agree. You got to win that game, and to me, their defense lost it. Hate it for Sellers, but I think he could end up being injury prone as much as they run the QB. The guy's hurt one time, and all of a sudden he's injury prone. I don't know, man. He rolled that ankle pretty good, and it wasn't on a running play. Their offensive line's not very good either. He's probably going to be running for his life in some games, and I don't know if it's unfair to label a kid. Matter of fact, I know it ain't fair to label a kid injury prone after he's made 2 starts just because he rolled an ankle. I think the spread is too high. Bailey looked decent in the second half. However, like I said earlier, the defense won that game. That said, La Tech is not Clemson's defense for our job. It should be a long day for the freshmen. We'll say it's a rivalry game. North Carolina State always comes ready to play. Interesting to see how offense responds coming off the bye week. Yeah, I am too, man. I'm very interested to see how Clemson's offense responds after that game against App State and the way they played, particularly the starters. And no matter what NC State's record is, they're always going to get up for Clemson. Always. We know the history between Dorn and Dabo. That's one he's going to get up for. And like I said at the top, that win in Death Valley is one he wants. That is one he wants. So there's no doubt they'll be up for that game. And yeah, I also agree with that. If I was a betting man, I'm not laying those points, man. I would snatch up North Carolina State and them points in a minute. According to the depth chart, has Woods listed as first at that position. That's the same depth chart they put out for the App State game. Outside of, I think they now have Sammy Woods or Sammy Brown behind Barrett Carter, Derek Wilt. You can't go by anything on the depth chart that Clemson puts out. Just look at the one they put out for App State. That Bryant West Coast started in a spot he's not listed at. Yeah. And the depth chart's the exact same this week. Anybody think Adam Randall's going back to starting Saturday? I don't. Dude, I put zero stock into those depth charts Clemson puts out. So for 2025 recruiting, wide receivers, Samari Alford commit to Ole Miss, Mills to OU. Right now, it looks like Juju Preston's it unless they find another one that they like and they think they can land. I do believe you'll probably see a guy or two leave after the season. Don't know who it's going to be. think it's way too early to speculate on that. But if you want to know what's up with it, I don't think Clemson really pushed hard for Samari Reed, especially down the stretch. They wanted Alfred. By all indications, they were going to get him. And Ole Miss comes in and ups their offer. Let's just say that, and he takes it. Mills might end up being a headache you're glad you avoided. He's taken other visits despite being committed to Oklahoma. He might very well end up flipping, and for the same reason that Alfred ended up back in Ole Miss. So if you want to know what's up with wide receiver recruiting, that's been the problem in 2025. Dabo hardly pays any attention to depth chart. I agree that those depth charts, for the most part, aren't worth the paper they're written on. So that's kind of addressing this one here too. Why does the coaching staff continue to designate Randall as a starter? He wasn't designated as a starter last Saturday night when they announced the starting lineup inside the stadium. You just can't put a whole lot of stock into those depth charts, man. They're just. If you'll compare the very first one they put out to the last one they put out each season, there's very little change. And most of the time, any changes that are made are due to a season-ending injury. Sometimes if a guy wins a starting job, it might take 3, 4, 5 weeks for him to actually be listed as a starter on the depth chart. I just wouldn't put a whole lot of stock into them. My goodness, I'm a little behind. Wish I could eat at Longhorns. I'm stuck in Ireland. My man says there's no steakhouses in Ireland. Man, that ought to be illegal. Matter of fact, let me go ahead and get it out of the way now. We're not running over tonight. 8 o'clock, I got to roll. We heading to a steakhouse. Wife wanted to go out to eat tonight, and it never fails. Every Monday, she forgets that I have this thing at 7 o'clock. And she's like, let's go out to eat tonight. I said, it's got to be after the show. Well, I told her the best I can do is promise you I'll jump off at 8 and not go over. So calling it now. TJ Moore has his breakout game. Spider-Man. Yeah, that I thought he broke out pretty well the other night for he didn't play a ton since they got up so big, but he made his presence felt. But yeah, his breakout game's coming, man. It's just a matter of when, not if. The bye week after seeing offense figure some things out, do we carry it over? I see Cade taking shots, may see a few interceptions. I don't care if Cade throws a pick or two. If you're taking shots, you're going to throw picks from that. And, as long as it ain't 3 or 4, I like the aggressiveness. Always have, no matter who's the quarterback. There's been a lack of aggressiveness in this offense for a long time. Ashford had like 4 completions. Yeah, they didn't ask him to throw the ball a whole lot, and when they did, it was only very rarely down the field. I think it was only the once. Matter of fact, that he really threw one down the field, and I do think that was one of the big calls they got hosed on. But yeah, I agree, man. That defense just slapped. I didn't like them going, not being so aggressive there before halftime in that second quarter, and maybe they did run out of gas in the second half. They don't have a bunch of depth at a lot of spots. It just is what it is. They absolutely, the pass rush was night and day different from the first half to the second half. Excited to see Terrell versus Concepcion. Hope QB play doesn't affect it too much. I'm curious to see how much Terrell is actually on Concepcion. It'll be some, but I don't know how much. They like to move him around to try to create mismatches. I'll be surprised if Terrell moves with him. But I would definitely like to see a matchup of those two guys for 4 quarters. But they'll move him around a lot to try to create some mismatches. Tyler Brown is healthy. Williams, Brownmore, Westco are lethal. Being spelled by Kelly, Noble, Randall, Stellato. Yeah, it sounds like, based on everything I heard early last week, I guess things could have changed since then. They've practiced a good bit since then. They did have some days off late in the week over the weekend, but it sounded like Tyler Brown was going to be all right. He just kind of tweaked the ankle. I think Dabo used the term rolled ankle. That's kind of what I said about Sellers earlier, although I don't expect Sellers to be back this week. What was Brian Kelly complaining about sending something in for? The play on the block punt. He says it was illegal for the defender to jump over the guy there. I forget how it's worded. It just depends on your interpretation of the rule, I guess. Dabo's day-to-day is not very convincing. Dabo's day-to-day can mean anywhere from a few days to a few weeks. He's just not gonna talk about injuries that way. He's not gonna divulge anything on injuries unless it's season ending. I wish the ACC would do what the SEC has done and make these schools do an injury report every week, and then there'd be no. You'd have to list it, and if you didn't, you get hit with a hefty fine. Will it be harder for Clemson to game plan against NC State with them playing back up? Maybe I wouldn't say you saw what they're going to do in the second half against Louisiana Tech the other night. They were down, man. When you're down in the second half, you ain't holding back, man. At least they know they don't have to prepare for two. It could have been worse. Doran could have not said a whole lot about McCall and not let anybody know who was going to play. Sellers is getting better week to week. He looked much better than he did against Old. Yeah, oh yeah, I agree, man. He's gonna continue to get better too. How successful he is going to depend on, how they develop him and whether they've got the right pieces around him. He's got all the talent in the world, but very few. No quarterback can do it all by himself. You got to have the right pieces in place. You got to have the right coaches in place, and I'm not convinced South Carolina has that. So I always hated the fact that he went there. He's kind of taken a similar path as Cutter Woods. Just kills it in high school, man. But for whatever reason, no big power programs are banging down their doors. Sellers' recruitment was a little bit different. He didn't really go out and seek that kind of attention. He didn't go out and work out at all these camps trying to, garner all these offers. He committed very early in the process, stay committed for a long time, coach got fired, decommitted. Then he committed to the school where the quarterback coach ended up going to. And then when his childhood favorite got in on him real late, he decommitted again and committed to them. I wish I could tell you a reason why these schools aren't banging down Cutterwood's door, and I haven't been for a year. Wish I could tell you a reason why they didn't with Sellers. I know Sellers missed almost probably 2/3 of his junior year hurt. And again, he stayed committed for a long time. He was committed to Virginia for a while, wanted to play for Robert Anae's offense. Then when Bronco Mendenhall stepped down and Anae went over to Syracuse, Sellers decommitted from Virginia, then committed to Syracuse, and then Anae leaves and he gets the offer from South Carolina, and the rest of that's history. Anything new with Jordan Young? He's going to be in Clemson this weekend. Heard he could commit in the next 3 to 4 weeks. He's always supposed to commit on October 12th. That's his birthday. That's the day he's always said he's going to commit on. Wouldn't shock me if he actually pushed it back. But as far as anything new, you have to get through this weekend and see how it goes. He hadn't been to Clemson since the big official visit weekend. Instead of going to the All-In Cookout, he chose to go to North Carolina State. He was in Charlotte for the North Carolina State game against Clemson as a North Carolina State recruit. He was in Raleigh last weekend, if I'm not mistaken. I know it was either the weekend before. Yeah, last weekend, back-to-back weeks. He was an NC State recruit. They've kind of been looked at as the favorite for a while. I mean, the best thing you can do is hope that you can get him on campus this week, remind him, because, remember, Clemson was viewed as the favorite and by a long ways for a while there. So the best thing you can do is get him on campus and try to remind him of what he likes so much about it. Do you think Sammy Brown will play a decent amount this week? I think you'll probably see, as long as the game's still in question, you'll see Carter and Woodaz taking probably a large majority of the snaps, if not all of them. I wouldn't expect to see a whole lot of Brown unless you get some garbage time snaps. North Carolina State beating us twice in the last 3 years, both times in Raleigh. Dave Dorn's never won in Clemson. Can't figure South Carolina out. Should have got beat by Old Dominion and beat up a Kentucky team that gave Georgia all they could handle. If both pick sixes doesn't get called back for stupid penalties, they beat LSU. Yeah, they still should have beat LSU. That's a game they should have won. That Georgia-Kentucky game, like I said, I only watched the first half of the South Carolina-Kentucky game, man, but golly, Kentucky was just absolutely abysmal that day. I mean, they look like they might not win a game. And then they play Georgia the next week. Georgia can't get out of their own way, man. It just goes to show you don't ever know what you're going to get from one thing to the next. But I don't think there's a ton of teams out there that are going to survive losing their starting quarterback. I think if Sellers doesn't get hurt, they score more points in the second half than they did with Ashford at quarterback. Maybe they get 7 off of the turnover there deep in LSU territory in the second half. You just don't know how things play out if Sellers doesn't get hurt. But I just don't think there are a ton of teams that are going to survive losing their starting quarterback. And they tried, the word coming out of South Carolina, like in camp, was like there's this legit competition between Ashford and Sellers for the starting job. And then you see that on Saturday. Man, no way, man. There was no doubt who was going to be the starting quarterback there this year. Any FSU or Florida commits on our radar? Nah, not yet. Anyways, few West Side receivers caught Garrett and Grisham's eye. I know Grisham was there to watch Marquise Henderson play the other night. I don't know about Garrett. Was Garrett Riley there too? I knew Grisham was, but I if they caught their eye that much, offers will be forthcoming. Stellato doesn't get more touches, he might quit. Never seen a dude be as open as he is and hardly gets any touch. He definitely, gets overlooked sometimes. There was a time or two against App State the other night too. One time he was streaking down the field, wide open, and might have been the pass. I think it was a play that ended up maybe hitting Brennan Stool out to the left. Can't remember, but didn't see Stellato streaking behind the defense. Sure, a lot of schools are going to offer that freshman defensive end at South Carolina a lot of money. Dylan Stewart, he's legit, man. That dude, he is impressive. Very, very impressive. Funny how in a month we've gone from FSU and Pac being the tough games in ACC to now maybe Louisville and Pitt. Agreed. If I, going into the season, if somebody asks you to name the top 4 teams in the league, everybody, probably 9 out of 10 people is going to have Florida State and North Carolina State in that top 4 somewhere. You ask them now, after 3 games, and probably nobody's got North Carolina State and Florida State in that top 4. I know I don't. Definitely got Louisville and Pitt in there, though. Pitt's had an interesting season so far. A couple of big comeback wins, including a big one in their rivalry game against West Virginia Saturday. I think they came. What was it? They came back from 10 down with 4 minutes to go. So I mean, they and I forgot who their first comeback win. It was a pretty big one. In their season opener, they had a pretty good comeback win too. That's a team that's all that. Generally speaking, they're going to have a pretty decent defense with Narduzzi there. But, yeah, that's a really good point. I think Stellato would be great at slot. He's been lining up in the slot this year. But he does have the ability to move inside or outside. That was one of the things they really liked about him when they recruited him. I remember that. Aren't all of Stellato snaps so far this year? It's like, if not all of them, the majority of them. Yep. I can't say for certain that they've all been in the slot, but I think most have. I could see Shelton on Concepcion. I see, like I said, I think whoever's on Concepcion is going to probably depend on where he lines up. I wouldn't be shocked if we don't see Shelton back in the nickel again Saturday, and Barnes in one of the deep safety spots like he was against App State. Is Clemson going to, one, use the other running backs, and two, not play down to opponents? I think Maffa's going to be the primary back. Will Haynes get some carries? Sure. I could see him being like a change of pace guy, from time to time. But Maffa's going to get the overwhelming majority of snaps. That's kind of the way it was expected to be that way. And as far as not playing down to opponents, can't answer that. I think everybody's kind of anxious to see if that offense can, have back-to-back, put back-to-back performances together where they show some consistency and an ability to put some points on the board. Who do you think is the legit number 2 running back behind Moffitt? It might say Adams on the depth chart, but I still say Haynes because I think Adams and Moffitt are so similar. If you're going to give Moffitt a breather and you're looking for a change of pace guy, that's Jay Haynes. And he's a guy that's a home run threat to touch the ball, or a home run threat every time he touches the ball. Florida was supposed to have a meeting today to get ready to Napier, but haven't heard any. I do know they had a board of trustees meeting or whatever they do down there, but if they were going to get rid of him right now, you'd have heard about it today, I would think. I would hope we'll find out more about Woods tomorrow or Dabo's presser, but we probably won't. He'll probably say day to day. And, the last I heard, it sounded like it was kind of iffy whether he play Saturday or not. But that's been back middle of last week. So I'm head back up there tomorrow. I'll talk to some folks Wednesday, but I haven't talked to anybody up there since I left Sunday morning. So I'll take that back. I haven't talked to anybody up there since Tuesday or Wednesday. I think it was late Tuesday when I was told that he was kind of, they thought it was iffy. But again, you got a week and a half between then and the game, so we'll see. I'll be surprised if we get much of an update tomorrow, outside of day to day. Thoughts on USC stepping down, Beamer on the clock, Sellers transfer because cut. I would not expect Lenore's to transfer. My thoughts on the AD stepping down are that I had heard some whispers that Tanner might be winding down in his tenure as AD. I was not expecting the announcement to come during the season. I don't think they were planning to do it during the season. As you see, they're not going to even start looking until after the fall semester. I think they were worried. They'd already been talking about it, and the more you talk about it, the more you risk a leak. And I think they were worried it was going to leak out, and they just wanted to go ahead and get out in front of it. But I think this is something that they've been talking about for a while now. it just I don't really have any thoughts on it. It'd be interesting to see who they hire. I don't know that Beamer's on the clock though, and I get it. Cutter's your boy. In your eyes, he's going to come out there and blow everybody else out. But man, there's a reason Power 5 teams ain't beating his door down. Jordan Young has been crystal ball to NC State. Crystal balls are wrong all the time, bro. All the time. All the time. And there's some of them guys over there, when they find out their crystal ball is wrong, they'll go in and change it, the day of a guy's announcement or the day before. I don't think they should be able to do that, but, that's a different discussion for a different day. But crystal balls are wrong all the time, man, and those came out before it was known that Young was coming to Clemson this weekend. Now, I ain't saying that Jordan Young's going to end up committing to Clemson. I would probably still call North Carolina State the front runner. Like I said, you just got to get him back on campus and remind him of what it was he liked so much about Clemson to begin with. And you never know. If he was already dead set on a decision, he's not coming to Clemson this weekend. No, I don't mean moving Terrell around. I mean they'll move Concepcion around to create mismatches. They'll move him all over the place to try to create mismatches. Cutter had 20. I know how many offers he's got, and how many outside of Wake. How many of those Power 5 schools was he the top guy on the board? Like I said earlier, man, I think Cutter's really good. I don't know why Power 5 teams aren't beating down his door. He's not undersized. I don't know that he's got like elite level arm strength, but he's got pretty good arm strength. He throws a really good ball. I've seen him play. I saw him play live last year. He's not a system quarterback. He makes good decisions. I mean, he's a really good quarterback, man. I wouldn't call him a dual threat guy. I mean, but he can move around some when he needs to. I don't understand it, but there's a reason why, all these schools weren't beating down his door, and he decided to go ahead and commit to Wake Forest to lock up a spot. I wish I had that answer. I'd love to know what it is. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Jarvis Green a couple of years ago, man. He's putting up video game-like numbers, there at Dutch Fork, and he's getting very little interest from Power 5 teams. I think Virginia Tech was one of them that was after him, if I'm remembering right. I might be wrong about that, but, he was getting very little Power 5 interest. Not like he's this undersized running back. The best answer I could get was most teams thought he was, so successful because of the system he played in at Dutch Fork. I don't know, man. It's kind of the same thing with Sellers, although, like I said earlier, Sellers' recruitment was a little different than Cutter's, but even the same, man. Power 5 teams weren't banging down his door either, and those two guys, Sellers and Cutter. I mean, those are two. They might be the two best high school quarterbacks I've seen in a while, man. In a while. And I've watched a lot of high school football the last 2-3 years, a ton. The last 5 years or so, really. But those, I'm big believers in both those guys, man. And I can't wrap my head around why they didn't get more interest than they did. Both of them, I can't understand why they didn't get more interest than they did. Was Kentucky looking forward to Georgia not taking South Carolina seriously? I don't know, man. I know that was a bad football team that day. Was Georgia looking ahead past Kentucky the other night? All those things are possibilities, but I don't know any reason why Kentucky would be looking past that South Carolina team, man. They're just not good enough to be looking past anybody. Red on a backboard that Young is the top of their recruiting board. They're going all in on him. What probably means NIL bank to open up for him. NIL played a big part in supposedly is playing a big part in him starting to trend towards North Carolina State over the past couple months. What's the go-to steakhouse in Florence? There's a Longhorns here, man. There's a lot of steakhouses here. For whatever reason, my wife wants to go to Western Sizzling tonight. I'm not a big fan of that place, but we got. Let's see. We got Longhorns, Outback. I can't remember all of them, man. We don't go out to eat that much. Top of my head, I can't remember. Texas Roadhouse, we got one of them. I always like going to Longhorns, though, if I'm going to get a steak. That's just me. Why has Clemson not recruited Cutter? Summer before last, at camp, Cutter came and worked out alongside George McIntyre, Blake Hebert, a bunch of other quarterbacks. And Garrett Riley decided Blake Hebert was the guy he wanted. They offered Hebert. They offered McIntyre. Hebert was the guy they really wanted more so than McIntyre, even though McIntyre is way ranked a lot higher. Just think Hebert was a better fit for what they wanted to do. And, again, that was the summer of 2023. Before Cutter's junior year, before his senior year. So you don't see what happens when as a junior, as a senior. Like I said a few minutes ago, man, I'd love to know the reasons why more schools haven't pursued Cutter, because I think he'd have been easy to flip from Wake. I don't think being committed to Wake scaring anybody off. It'd be different if he was committed to Auburn or, Georgia or something like that. But Wake. I wish I knew that answer. I am not a professional talent evaluator, but if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's usually a duck. And man, Cutter Woods has got all the tools, man. Again, about the only bad thing, it's not even bad. A lot of quarterbacks don't have elite level arm strength, and I've only seen him play live once, and I don't remember thinking that he had elite level arm strength. But that doesn't mean he's got a weak arm by any stretch, man. He's got plenty of arm strength. I just wouldn't put him on the level of, say, like a Trevor Lawrence or somebody like that. And I'm just talking about sheer arm strength. That's about the only negative thing I can say about him from watching him play. I can't figure out why other teams haven't pursued him more heavily. Yes, Cincinnati was the other comeback win for Pitt. DJ is the worst. I've seen him this year, and that's saying a lot. He looks absolutely lost. No accuracy. His decision-making is abysmal. I don't see him remaining the starter when we play them. I said before the season I wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't a starter by then. I am a little surprised they've not already at least tried to go with Brock Glenn, or heck, they got a true freshman on the bench that I think at least one service had rated as a 5-star. So he's very highly touted coming out of high school. I can't remember his name, but at some point, you're only 0-1 in ACC play, so right? Or are they 0-2? Let's see. Georgia Tech. Okay, they're 0-2 in ACC play. So they're already 2 games back. At a certain point, you got to start playing for next year. Because you're not going to make the playoff. You're not going to win the ACC. And maybe he's waiting to lose one more game. But at a certain point, you got to make that call. But if they stick with DJ much longer and they continue to lose the way they lose and look as inept as they looked on offense, then you got to start wondering why. And is NIL factoring into that thing, man? Because I think that's one of the questions that doesn't get asked a lot. When some of these kids sign big NIL deals, what happens when they don't perform? Is a coach going to be able to bench him, depending on who's paying that money every month? Because let's say a kid signs for $800,000, they don't get that $800,000 right then. It's usually they get paid about a month or whatever. Somebody's writing that check, and if it's coming from, a big business that's a big part of your collective, they don't want to see the guy they're paying all that money to ride the bench. It'll be interesting to see how some of those things play out as we move forward with some of these guys getting big money and they aren't performing up to the level that they should, seeing as how much money they're making, if that makes sense. I think I explained that well enough. It'll be interesting if they stick with him much longer. If they lose another game or two and they still stick with him, man, I got serious questions about what's going on behind the scenes there. But Florida State's got bigger problems than DJ, man. They're off. Their defense is terrible. That defensive line was supposed to be arguably the best in the country. It looks like ass. Everybody's run on it. It's been terrible. Their wide receivers haven't been very good. Their offensive line's not been very good. There's just nothing working for them right now. And if you listen to Mike Norvell, I think it was in his press conference, I think he had one today and said this, or it might have been after the game the other day, that they look way different in practice than they do on game days. Where have you heard that before? Hughes might be another sleeper. Going back to, who would you have in the top 4 in the ACC right now? I might have Hughes and I might have Syracuse in that top 4. I definitely have Miami number 1. I might put Clemson at number 2 and maybe Louisville 3. Or no, I might put Pitt 3. And then 4A and 4B being Syracuse and Louisville, man. Syracuse is going to be a hard out with McCord at quarterback. And again, like I said last week, it feels like Gaston's been there for a decade. Yes, Maffa showed some wheels on that long run. He hit a gear that I did not know he had. I've seen it said that he was clocked at 20-point-something miles an hour. That's what Sellers was clocked at on that long run he had the other day. That was 4th highest over the weekend in the country. I didn't know Maffa could run that fast, and I've not seen it anywhere officially that he was clocked at that fast. I just read that he was somewhere. Somebody told me that. I can't remember now. He definitely he was definitely moving on that play, man. And then you watch Wesco, who outran all of them, and he made it look easy. Still not a big fan of Moff on kickoff returns, though. I don't care if he did show that extra gear, man. I see somebody's asking me about that up above, but no, I'm not a big fan of Moff on kickoff returns. But at the same time, it's a rare occasion that you get somebody returning kickoff season days. Most of them are touchbacks. I'd much rather see somebody that's not a starter returning kicks, man. Maybe I don't know, a Jay Haynes, or I don't know, one of those other somebody that's got some speed and some twitch and is a home run threat, at least potentially. Um, I just I don't know if I put Maffa in that category. Offense was completely different versus App State. What do you think the primary? What do you think was the primary factor? Do you think this is who we are now, just a flash in the pan? I think the primary factor was execution. I came on here right after the Georgia game and criticized the play calling, more so the game. I'm coming more so the game plan than the play calling. Um, I remember calling it too conservative and not being aggressive enough, and I might have jumped the ship on that a little bit. I might have should have held off on that because I didn't see a whole lot different Saturday. As far as like play calls and route running and stuff. I do think there was more open across the middle of the field against App State than there was against Georgia. But I just think the execution was better. I think the QB play was just that much better. I think you had the right wide receivers on the field, guys that can stretch the field, get behind the defense, and you saw it on the third play of the game. I would have preferred to see those freshman wide receivers play a little bit more against Georgia. Wesco got 12 snaps. Moore didn't get to 6, and he didn't even get in the game until it was over. But that's just me. It just, for me, it was all about execution. And was it a flash in the pan? I think a lot of that's going to, ride on your quarterback, and can he keep playing at the level that he did last Saturday? And let's not forget the offensive line. I hadn't even talked about them at all tonight. That offensive line has been so much improved as compared to where it was last year. I expected it to be better. I don't know that I thought it would be this much better. Man, they have. I know Cade's gotten sacked 2 or 3 times so far. I think he got sacked twice against Georgia. But they didn't put either one of those sacks on the offensive line. So, technically they've not given up a sack. They put both those on Cade. The pass protection's been there. So I think that's a big part of it. If you can get Cade comfortable and trusting in his pass protection, I think that's going to go a long ways toward him, putting some consistent performances together. You're not going to see him do what he did the other night, probably ever again. That was a half of football unlike anything I've ever seen, particularly that first quarter. But I do, I don't think we're going to know if it's a flash in the pan or not until Saturday. I think everybody wants to know the answer to that question. I wish I had it for you. I am very curious to see if Klubnik can go back and or go out and start stacking some performances together, being consistent, making some plays down the field. You saw when you made some plays down the field against App State, it just opens everything else up. First time catching you live. Thanks. Appreciate that, my friend. Is it possible that Jordan Young is just taking some free hospitality? It's not free. He's got to make that trip on his dime, bro. It ain't free. It's an unofficial visit. It's coming out of his pocket. All right. Last one. Cutter wanted to stay close to home. He played in Texas Elite 11. Finished. Yeah, I understand he wanting to stay closer to home, but that still doesn't answer why he didn't have more teams, showing interest in him. And I wish I knew the answer to that, man, for both those guys, because I don't have it. Because I think he is a lot better than what his offer sheet indicates. And I know he's got an offer from Auburn and Virginia Tech, and I can't remember. Maybe I can't remember all the rest of them. The Power Five. There wasn't let's see. I pull them up right now. There wasn't a whole lot of them. Of the ones he's got, though, very few was he the top guy on the board. Those teams all wanted quarterbacks ahead of him. South Carolina, Auburn, Indiana, Syracuse, Virginia Tech. Heck, I know Kentucky was showing some interest in him at some point. I don't know that they ever offered him. Virginia Tech ended up, I just think I can't figure it out, man. I don't understand it. Do not understand it. Like, I'll say the same thing about Cutter that I said about Lenore's. I hate that he's going to end up going to South Carolina, because I don't know that is where he could have the most success. Let's put it that way. Appreciate everybody that tuned in. I still ran a little bit over, man. Never fails. I can never get it right. Don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We're here every Monday, 7 p.m. Check us out on the site, ClemsonInsider.com. See y'all next week. You ready to go?